This is the pretest for Unit 9, which is on radicals. Now, in class, what we've been using is the list of perfect squares and perfect cubes. So we should be recreating that list before we start this quiz. So we start it by doing 2 times 2, which is 4, which tells us that the square root of 4 is 2. And then we do the same for the other ones. 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, 5 times 5 is 25, and so on. And I normally go up to 10 for this. And if you're not sure of any of these, then you should just be using your calculator. And the square root of 100 is 10. So, because these are the numbers that we're going to be using when we try and simplify our radicals later. Now, we're also going to be simplifying cube roots as well, so we should be doing the same thing for this as well. 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. So the cube root of 8 is 2. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. And probably for these ones you probably are going to need a calculator. 4 times 4 times 4. 5 times 5 times 5. 6 times 6 times 6. And I'm just going to go to 6 right now, and I can always continue up to 10 if I need to. So this should be the first thing that you do when you actually do your test. Make sure you know those perfect squares and the perfect cubes, which allows you to actually work out what they are. Now, as a reminder on the calculator, if you want to work out something on the calculator just to check, let me just move this across a little bit. So I'm in the run menu here. If I press Shift and X squared, that gives me the square root symbol. So if I just want to check the square root of 100, it will indeed give me 10. Or if I want to check the cube root of 64, to do cube roots, Shift and left parenthesis, and put the little 3 in front. Then that's how you can check the square roots and also the cube roots. So, first question says that we're going to simplify each expression. So what that means is we're going to try breaking this down a little bit. So you can try working out the square root of 50 on your calculator if you're not sure if it's a perfect square or not, although we should already know from our list that it's not. So we can't just put 7.07 now. We do have to try splitting it up. So we need to find two numbers that multiply together to make 50, and one of them has to be on this list. If we're not sure what the numbers are, then what we can do is, if we start from the bottom of the list and work upwards, we can try each number until we find the correct number. Now, anything number that's bigger than 50, obviously is not going to work for this one, so I could start with 59, I could start with 49. Does 50 divide by 49? I think it's pretty obvious it doesn't. Does it divide by 36? No. Does it divide by 25? And it does. So the answer for this question is going to be 25 and 2. So square root of 25, square root of 2. And then we simply work out what is the square root of 25. And we have that here already. It's 5, so we can write down the answer as 5 radical 2. So this is simplified because we start with radical 50, but we finish with a smaller radical, which is 2. Then we're going to do the same thing for all these ones. Now, 200 you can split up as 4 and 50. And if you do that, you get 2 radical 50. But then you need to split 50 up as well. And actually, we've already done 50 on the previous question, so I could just take that answer from there. Square root of 25 is 5. Times by 2 is 10. And then we have a radical 2 on the end. Now, if we try the method I used in the last question, though, and try the numbers on our list, if I do 200 divided by the bottom number, which is 100, then that actually works perfectly good. I get 102, and the square root of 100 is 10. So I get the same answer I had a second ago, but you only need to simplify once if you do that. Now, if you follow the same method for this question, then, you would find that it's 81 and 2, and the square root of 81 is 9. Any question with hundreds are always going to be fairly easy to do, because it's just going to be 100 and that number. So the square root of 100 is 10, and then the last number is 7. Questions with division, we're just going to divide the numbers. So 72 divided by 6 is 12. And as this is inside a radical, the answer is radical 12. And then we'll try splitting this one up as well. So 4 and 3. So 2 radical 3. If I was trying to split up 12 again, I would ignore all these numbers because these are all bigger than 12. So my first number I would try is 9. 12 doesn't divide by 9 perfectly, but 4 does. So we can use that as well as our little help. Now on question 6, there is a couple of different ways we can do this question. In general, to make sure it works for every question, I'm just going to times the two numbers together, which gives me the square root of 200. And I already explained how to do that earlier, so I'm not going to go any further on that question. If you want to know the other way of doing that question, then I could split this up and notice that it can be written as 10 and 2. Now normally I say don't do this because 10 isn't one of the numbers that's on our square root list. But if we have two square roots that are the same and multiply them, then we just get 10. And that would also be the answer that we had a second ago as well. 7 times 3 is 21. And you can try and split 21 up, but it's not going to happen for this question. Square root of 25 is 5. So we have 2 times 5, which is 10. Square root of 25 times by 8. Well, I can do the square root of 25. It's 5. So that makes this question a little bit easier. And then I've got to try splitting 8 up. So 8 I can write as 4 and 2. Square root of 4 is 2. Times by this 5 is 10. Now, just a reminder, if you want to check your answer to see if they're right, we can work all these things out as decimals as well. So if I type in radical 25 times by radical 8, I get this decimal. I think the answer is 10 radical 2. And notice you do end up with the same decimal answer. As this has a smaller radical, I can clearly tell that I have simplified. When we get to number 10, this is a question that's a little bit longer. I've got to split this up into several parts. 72, square root of x, square root of z to the 6, square root of y to the 5. So the numbers we can just do like we did earlier. I'm going to do it over here. 72. I'm going to go back to my list. I'm going to ignore all these numbers because these are bigger than 72. 72 doesn't divide by 64, doesn't divide by 49, but it does divide by 36. So I can write this as 36 and 2, and the square root of 36 is 6. So the square root of 72 I can write 6 radical 2, which I'm going to do up here. Square root of x, there's not a lot I can do with that, so I'm just going to put square root of x. Z to the 6, with that being an even number, I can just half this number. So I'm going to check on my calculator. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So the square root of z to the 6 is just z to the 3. Now y to the 5 isn't, you can't perfectly half it. So 5 divided by 2, you can see here we have a decimal. So like I did with the previous one, I'm going to take the number in front of the decimal. So y to the power of 2, because it says 2.5. And then any remainder, I'm just going to put the square root of whatever that letter was. Okay, let's have a look what we have here. Well, I have a few terms here that don't have a square root, so I'm going to write those at the front, and I'm going to put them in the correct order. So I'm going to use the commutative rule. And then the ones that are inside a square root, I'm going to combine and put them under a single square root, and that's going to be the answer to my question. Moving on to 11, another long question because it's got multiple steps in here. I've got to split this up. 81, w to the 5, h to the 4, q to the 3, k squared, and r. So I'm splitting it up for each letter. Square root of 81 we can just work out. That's actually just 9. Now if I want to do 5, if I want to try half in that, that's one I just worked out a second ago. 2.5. So I'm going to put w to the power of 2, and then the remainder, the 0.5, tells me I have to put the square root of w. Now if I do 4 divided by 2, it works perfectly. It's just 2 with no remainder. When I try working out 3 divided by 2, it says 1.5. So I'm going to put q to the power of 1, and as there was a remainder, I'm going to put radical q inside. K squared, I can half that. Half of 2 is 1, so k to the power of 1. Or even better, just k. And radical r, there's no exponent there, so I can't simplify that one. I just got to leave that one alone. Now we can start looking at things that don't have a radical around them. So negative 2 times 9 is negative 18. W squared, h squared. Q to the 1, I can just put q and k. And then which radicals do I have? W, q, and r. And probably to finish off this question, I should put these letters in alphabetical order, and I should also probably put those letters in alphabetical order as well. Okay, I'm going to have to erase part of this answer so I can do question 12. So find the area of a rectangle. Find the area of a rectangle, we're just going to multiply base times height, so this times this. So numbers first, radical second, so 6 times 3 is 18. Radical 10 times radical 2 is radical 20. And then let's break down 20. That's 4 and 5. Square root of 4 is 2. Times by this 18 is 36. therefore the answer is 36 radical 5. And that concludes the first half of this pretest.